If you're a founder in the construction industry, then you probably already know that one of the biggest frustrations is to get people to adopt something new. Construction is often called the most change-resistant industry in the world, rivaled only by agriculture. Productivity in construction has barely moved in the last 50 years. Meanwhile, in other industries, things are moving as fast as the speed of light. The average time to adopt new building practices or even new building techniques in the construction industry is about 15 to 20 years. Just for comparison, in the tech industry, the average time to adopt something new is approximately 3 to 5 years. But then here's the paradox. Construction does adopt new things. Power tools have all but replaced hand tools. Ready-mix concrete has replaced on-site mixing. We have a suite of software that has replaced hand drafting, and metal framing is on its way to replace wood framing. And so the real question isn't, will construction ever adopt innovation? The question is, why is it that some innovations succeed while others barely make it off the ground? And if you're a founder that's working uphill to get adoption of your product, maybe you've tried marketing, you've tried trade shows, education, you've even tried discounting your product and nothing sticks, then this video is for you. I spent 15 years leading digital transformation projects in large corporations, including banks, oil and gas, and in the energy sector as a change management advisor. And that was before moving into marketing consulting. And the moment I signed my first marketing client in the construction industry, I recognized the same patterns of resistance to change when we first started introducing certain technology into the corporate world. And since then, I have helped several building materials companies to not only anticipate resistance to change when they introduce their products, but to be able to position those products effectively for a resistant market and to be able to sell profitably. And so I'm going to break this video down into 3 parts. Part 1 is the psychology behind the resistance. And this explains why even the most well-meaning people will reject ideas that are actually beneficial to them. The second part will cover the mistakes that innovators and founders make when they launch or introduce new ideas into the market. And then the third will be your adoption playbook. These are the specific strategies that you can use when you're launching a new product to position it effectively for a resistant market. All right, so let's start by talking about the real reason why people resist change. And I'm going to start with a quick story about one of my first clients in the construction industry. This guy was manufacturing prefabricated steel framing, and he had spent so much money on advertising. He had even tried billboards. He had tried going to trade shows. He had tried digital advertising, and he wasn't really getting any traction. The amount that he was spending on advertising was way more than even the interest that he was getting for his product. And so when he contacted me, he thought he had a marketing problem. I should also add that he was prefabricating steel framing specifically for commercial buildings, mid-rise commercial buildings like multifamily units, shopping centers, that kind of thing. And so when I looked at the comparison, wood versus steel framing, steel framing is straighter. You get a more precise measurement. It is fire resistant. It does not rot. It is resistant to bugs, unlike wood. It is more durable. It is more sustainable. And all of these things to me on paper looked fantastic. And mind you, this was during the summer of 2020. So lumber prices were ridiculous. And this was obviously because of the supply chain issues during the pandemic. But then in addition to that, interest rates had been slashed. They were at rock bottom. So the demand for lumber was up here and the supply was negligible. So the fluctuation in prices was just ridiculous. And while I'm having a conversation with my client, I'm saying something doesn't add up. You have a fantastic product, it looks fantastic on paper. The market is insane right now. Why are you not selling this thing? And so I started to ask him to talk to me about the objections of the people he's tried to sell to, the people he's actually gotten on the phone with. What are their objections? Because at this point, I'm trying to get to the bottom of the root issue. Is it the product? Is it the way that you are presenting it? And so some of the objections that he started to talk to me about, he said, steel is noisy on site. They don't like that. And he's selling, by the way, to GCs, general contractors. He's also selling to some developers. And he's also talking to framing crews or subcontractors. They also had concerns that it is more expensive upfront, which I totally understand. And they said things like it is slower to install because at the end of the day, they had to use screws, which the crews had been used to using nail guns, and those they just go around faster. But the one thing that they said that really caught my attention is that, around here, we're just used to wood. The crews know what to do. If something goes wrong, we know how to fix it. We know the ins and outs, and it's just what we are used to. And that comment right there is what just sparked it for me. And I recognized that immediately. This was not just an issue of wood framing versus steel framing. A lot of the objections that they brought up were actually workable, especially considering the situation in the market at that time as it pertained to lumber. These were all fixable objections. It was very possible at the time to train the crews, to run the numbers and be able to show them that even though steel is more expensive up front, that there was a possibility of long-term savings. But even with presenting all of these benefits, there was just absolutely no take. The people were just not interested. And here's the truth that no one will say out loud. There was fear behind this whole decision. Fear and self-preservation are the strongest forces in any decision. These people are not resisting because they're being stubborn or they're just being irrational. There's something within them that's screaming danger. There is something within them that perceives a risk if they change their behavior. And the decision to say no or to just not make any decision is self-preserving. And let's talk about some of these things that they actually fear that they may not bring up in this sales conversation. One of them is the loss of competence. A framer or a framing subcontractor who has spent 20 years mastering the art of wood framing now has to, at least in their perception, go back to being a beginner when it comes to steel framing. If something doesn't go the right way, now they have to be the person who's asking the questions as a beginner. That is a real fear that they will lose their status. They will lose their identity as the competent or the expert in a field that they take pride in. The other thing that they fear is the loss of control. In the wood framing versus steel framing scenario, the people that do the wood framing are used to having control over all aspects of their job. Now, when it comes to steel framing, there's fabricators and engineers involved in every decision. And so now they are going back to feeling like the person that, again, has to ask for permission or has to ask for someone else's opinion. Another thing that they fear losing is their reputation. A general contractor might fear that if they start using steel framing because they're not very familiar with it, if something goes wrong, it could cost them their reputation. And so as you can see, at the root of all of this is a loss of status. It's a loss of a certain standing in their community, with their fellow crew members, with their business partners. It is a loss of something that they have built a certain pride in, and they perceive making a decision to switch to a different product, even though beneficial to them, they perceive that they're going to take a personal individual identity hit. And that to them is a risk they're unwilling to take. And to be fair, these are not abstract concerns. These are real human instincts. They're just being human. Again, they're not trying to be stubborn or irrational. Another one that I picked up on is the loss of a certain expertise identity. If you have spent years and years and years perfecting your trade as the person that's able to either measure or correct or fix issues when it comes to wood framing, and now all of a sudden, especially when it comes to prefabricated materials, they're being delivered already fitting the standards. All the work has been done. All of the thinking, all of the tinkering, all of the fixing has already been done. And so now as the framer, you're now starting to think, am I just the assembly line? Do I not need my expertise anymore? And that to them signals a change in status. It signals a change in position when it comes to the order of things. Rather than be the expert that was creating and fixing and tinkering, they now kind of feel like an order taker. And that to them is scary. It is unsettling, and it signals perceived risk. And so, as you can imagine, as an innovator or a founder in this space, when you're launching your product, you can't just use logic to talk these people into adopting your product. It has to go beyond logic. You can't logic someone out of feeling unsafe, even when that may or may not be true in the actual sense. It needs to be a completely different conversation that has been prearranged and that is approached from a place of empathy and a place of understanding. Because at the end of the day, construction is still a very people-driven business. It's not just about the materials and the method. And people will always protect what they know, and they will always protect themselves. And that's why there is such a resistance to change in the construction industry. And honestly, once you start to see it this way, it begins to make sense. And now that we understand why people within the construction industry resist change, let's talk about what innovators and founders do wrong when they launch new products. One of the most common mistakes that I see is leading with specs instead of outcomes. And this most commonly happens with founders that are highly technical, the engineers, the people that have been in product design. And they do this, well-meaning, because these specs matter to them. It's the only lens within which a designer or an engineer can see the product, because that is what makes the product excellent. But the comparison that I like to make when it comes to leading with specs instead of outcomes is the comparison with say you're sick, right? You're not feeling well, and you go to the doctor and you get a prescription. When you go to fill the prescription at the pharmacy, there are very specific things that you, as the person that is sick, is interested in. And one of those things is not the ingredients of the medicine. You don't go to the pharmacy and say, can you give me a list of ingredients that went into this, this pill or this injection or, this medicine that I'm about to take. The things that concern you the most are the outcomes. How long until I start to feel better? How many do I have to take a day? Do I have to swallow a pill? Do I have to take some bitter medicine? You're more concerned about the immediate outcomes, what the ingredients mean, rather than what the ingredients are. General contractors are not concerned about how heavy the product is, about the dimensions, yes, those things matter, but their assumption is that you as the engineer, you as the expert have already figured that out. What they're concerned about is that, is it going to take more time for my crews to complete the installation? Is it going to mess up my schedule? Is it going to mess up my job site? Am I going to need more power, more energy? Is it going to increase certain bills? They're more concerned about the outcomes and not necessarily the specs. They assume that you've already figured those out. And so anytime you're launching a new product, remind yourself that when you go to the pharmacy, you don't ask for a list of ingredients. You ask about the outcomes. You ask about the side effects. You ask about the way that you're going to consume the medicine. Is it going to be comfortable for you? Is it going to make you feel better quickly? And translate those into how you talk to your customers about your new product. And that sounds something like, frame the house in 3 days instead of 5. Your crew will learn this new technique in 1 afternoon. We will cover the costs of their education. If anything fails, we will replace it for free. You will save on site management because you will not have waste that you have to take care of. When you lead with these things, then you have a conversation. Then you have people coming to the table with things, with benefits that they're already thinking about when it comes to the things that they care the most about. And after they've already bought in, then you can introduce the specs. Then you can say the reason it takes 3 days instead of the traditional 5 days is because of these specs. The reason it's going to be lighter and more beneficial for your building is because of this. You can use the specs to then help them rationalize the decision that they have already made in their minds that this is the product for them. Another mistake that I see all the time is selling to the wrong person first. Your early adopters should not be the people that have to work uphill to convince the people with the power and the money to adopt the new technology or to adopt the new method or the new material. But what founders and innovators do is that they target the people who make sense logically. So if you have an innovation within framing, you target the framers because that makes sense logically. If you're selling innovation in concrete, then you target the concrete suppliers because that's what makes sense logically. But then a lot of times you find that when you target the end installer, they have the least power to influence change over the project. They are the least equipped to influence adoption of your new innovation. And so when you start thinking about entry points, you want to think about the right entry point depends on the innovation type. If it is an innovation that reduces costs and impacts the schedule, then you obviously want to start talking to developers and general contractors first. If it solves design challenges, then you want to talk to the architects. If it has to do with site management, you want to start involving the general contractors. If it makes installation easier, or if it changes the way installation is done, then you definitely want to talk to the subcontractors, and specifically the more forward-thinking subcontractors. Now, one thing that I learned from working as a change advisor in a large corporate environment and managing huge digital transformation projects is that the people that have the most influence aren't always the people that have the most power. There are people within an organization or within a community or even within a crew that hold influence just based on certain information that they know, based on how long they've been working for the company or how long they've been in the business, just based on their personality. They're people that are very culturally influential, and these people have the key to either helping you launch a new innovation or sabotaging you when it comes to launching something new. To give you an example, so this company was going to launch a new CRM software that was going to replace a lot of the manual application processes that they were using before. One of those application processes involved downloading an Excel template, filling it out with the customer's information, and then re-uploading that template into a different system to complete the application process. And every so often there were changes either in the business or in the industry or in regulation that required that master document to be revised. And there was only one person that owned the master document that was able to make those changes. And this person was also very influential in determining which changes were significant enough to go into the master document. In addition to that, they had been with the company for a very long time. So they knew the history of the document. They knew the history of the application process, which changes came from where, how long ago certain changes were implemented, how they're working in the new system. And so just by observation, you can tell this person, even without them being in management and without them having any kind of power over other employees, they were very influential in the sense that they were a gatekeeper. And so I, as the change manager, had to make sure that this person was involved early because they have the power to influence other employees on whether or not they like the new product or whether they can work with the new product. They also have the same power to sabotage the new process. They know the ins and outs of the process. They can really help you or they can sabotage you. And so I want you to think about the same scenario in construction. Think about the individuals within either organizations or within the community or within certain crews or within certain subcategories that are influential without necessarily holding any power. They may not be the owner of the company. However, just because they're either gatekeepers or they have certain tenure or they know somebody that knows somebody, these people can be very helpful to you when you're launching a new product in terms of getting them on your side. And just be aware, if they do not like your product, they could also sabotage you. These are the kinds of people that you want to keep close and manage their resistance. Keep in mind that resistance to change, as we talked about earlier, is a human condition. It's just something that we do to self-preserve as humans, and you cannot get rid of it. You cannot eliminate resistance to change, but you can manage it. You can make sure that you're monitoring the key individuals that are influential and managing their resistance. Another mistake that innovators and founders in construction make is that they ignore a risk reversal strategy. As we talked about earlier, Individuals and practitioners in the construction field have a lot to lose if things don't go right. And that risk perception is the main reason why they're hesitant to grab onto new ideas or new equipment or new technology. And so let's talk about the levels of risk reversal that you can apply to your product and to your product launch that will help it get adopted faster. Level 1 is going to be proof. And this is where you come with data, with case studies, with actual demonstrations of products to show that it actually works. The number one thing that your client and your prospects want to know is that it will work. Show me the proof that it will work. Level 2 is limited exposure. Are you able to provide samples or limited products that they can use for either a single room or a subsection of their project? If they're able to actually touch and feel the product and use it, or touch and feel the equipment and use it on a subset or a small section of their project and be able to compare side by side to traditional legacy methods, that again will demonstrate to them proof that this thing actually works and it is beneficial for them. Level 3 is a performance guarantee. So you're guaranteeing that the product, the material, or the tool will perform as designed, or you will replace it for free. You can also guarantee that the crew will learn it or be able to quickly adopt it, or you will replace the product or give them some kind of resolution for that situation. And then level 4 is where you guarantee the outcome, where you say, this method will reduce your schedule by X number of days or by X number of weeks, or you will switch them back to what they were using before. This is where you're guaranteeing that there will be a certain outcome, or there will be some level of compensation. Risk reversal strategies are a way of showing your buyers and your audience that you have skin in the game, that you have something to lose if the thing does not perform as you have promised. It is a very effective way of putting their fears at ease and allowing them to try the product without necessarily being nervous about what they could lose. All right, now that we've talked about the mistakes that a lot of founders make, let's talk about the actual strategies that work in getting adoption in the construction industry for either new products or new methods or new technologies. And these are strategies that I have actually used with my clients who are in the building materials space to get their products adopted and to get them to sell more and to be profitable in their businesses. And I'm going to start by telling you a story about a client that I had who is in the concrete business. So he was selling pre-mixed concrete in pre-packaged bags. And his target market was handymen who were doing small projects. Think about farm structures, concrete repairs, barns, just any project that is smaller than a residential home. And he came to me with what he perceived as a marketing issue. He had tried to get buyers of his products, especially the people who were taking these small projects. And he was telling them, as usual, coming to them with the specs of the product. It is convenient. It is mixed in the proper ratios. It is stronger than whatever else is in the market that they were using. It is more durable. It is a better looking finish. All of the things that he perceived as an engineer were going to benefit the user when it came to switching from the traditional mixing methods that they were using to actually using a pre-packaged, pre-manufactured product. And at the time, the message was not landing. And for some reason, he just felt like it was him that was not communicating the right way or not saying the right things because this product was just not selling. And his business at this point is at the brink of going under. And so when I start to look at it again on paper, it looks like a fantastic product. It addresses so many problems and issues that the users were facing at that particular moment. But again, the reason that they were giving, the objections that they were giving weren't the real reasons that they did not want to buy this product. You know, it is more expensive upfront, or it is packaged in 50 kg bags. We're used to buying products that are packaged in 40 kg bags. We don't know if it's going to work. This is new. We've never seen anything like this. We don't know if it's going to work. But behind these objections are fear. A pre-mixed product means that you no longer have to use what you have gathered as expertise for a long period of time. Now you're just buying something, adding water, and continuing with the job. Yes, it is convenient, but it also represents a taking away of certain expertise that has now been outsourced to a factory. Another thing that they fear losing is business, because now this product is so easy, everything has already been figured out. It's only a matter of time before people just start doing it themselves. And so they fear that whatever value they brought to this process has now been taken away from them. And so the strategies that I'm going to share in this section are the exact same strategies that I used with this client to be able to get adoption and to be able to successfully sell this product. Strategy number 1 is the champion strategy. Rather than trying to sell to everyone, pick a few champions that are going to be influential and that are going to lead the way in recommending your product, in showing that your product works, and in influencing other people to try your product. And so what we did in this particular scenario was approach a handful of handymen, a handful of people that were already in this business. And so by handpicking these people, we are number one, showing appreciation for their trade, for their expertise, and for what they have built over time to have this reputation that they had. And so that helps them relax and be open to new ideas. We also gave them free products that they can use in their project to be able to see and believe that this is a product that actually works, that saves them time, that's more convenient, and that's better for them to use. We also provided other incentives in this whole process. We provided a camera crew to be able to film them using the product and to help them with their online marketing. So in addition to them getting free product that they can use, they're also getting leads from people that can now see that they're using this new product and that it's working for their small project. And so by stacking all of these benefits for this particular individual and not necessarily trying to reach the whole market, we gain an evangelist. We gain someone who is not only going to become a customer, but they're also going to become someone who spreads the word, someone who influences their peers to try the product. And what that does is that it lowers the barrier to entry. It invites other people based on curiosity and not necessarily based on advertising or sales. Strategy number 2 was to pick a segment that we were going to try and influence first. The small segment that we were going to dominate, which is then going to act as our springing point to introduce other types of projects and other types of practitioners to try this product. So the segment that we chose was patios. The handymen that were working on patios to either install new patios or to do repair work on patios, anyone that was kind of involved in that type of work, we went with marketing this product as the to-go product for this kind of work. We're not necessarily trying to pull everyone in at the same time. If we can keep showing the same result over and over and over again, it pulls the audience based on proof, based on every time a project is done for a patio, it works for this. And so if we can get even one handyman or one contractor to use it for a patio, that means that they can use it for other jobs. And so the goal of this strategy is to dominate a small segment first and then let that word spread organically so that other people and other use cases can try the product. It is clear, it is repetitive, and it sends the signal that this product does not only work one time, it works every time. The other strategy that we used was the proof of concept strategy. And this was specifically targeted to the individuals and to the contractors that had expressed that they weren't sure that this product was going to work. They had never experienced it. They wanted to be able to touch it, and they wanted to be able to prove to themselves that it actually does what we say it's going to do. And so for this particular strategy, we had salespeople actually approach specific handymen and go to specific work sites to help with the adoption of the product, to actually demonstrate and to put the product in the user's hands so they can actually try it while they're on site. Because we realized that marketing the product and asking people to try it was not enough. We had to actually come to them in their environment and introduce it to them so they can touch it, feel it, try it, and then come back a couple of days or call a couple of days later and ask them, how was your experience? How is it looking? How is it feeling? Is it something that you are now interested in maybe trying a bigger project on it? or actually just buying the product. And this strategy specifically works because a lot of construction people want to touch and feel the product. And a lot of times they're not going to come out of their usual schedule or the region where they are to go and find something to try. And just by implementing these three strategies, we not only had the word spreading around to other people in the industry, to other handymen, to other contractors, to other subcontractors, we also had testimonials, we had proof, we had content that we could use in our marketing and in our social media pages. And that really helped bring visibility to this new product. And in this situation, the visibility was very impactful because it was from people within the industry. It was from people who were influential, people who were believable, and people who were relatable within the industry. So it was easy for someone else to look and say, that person is just like me. That person does exactly what I do. I am interested in trying this product. And so from that springing board, we were able to create bigger campaigns. We were able to now start marketing this product just based on that data that we had collected from those three strategies. And so in conclusion, resistance to change is a human condition. And it just so happens that construction is still a very human touch industry. It's not like other industries where it's so easy to launch a product that does not have any human involvement, that does not have any face-to-face conversations or actually touching and feeling a product. And because of that, there is a certain intention that you need to approach it with when you introduce or launch new and innovative products. It is possible with the right strategies. I'm interested in hearing your feedback on this topic. If you have had any experience, if you have tried to sell a product, if you've been successful in getting a product adopted in this industry, I'm interested in hearing your experience. If you have any questions, let me know. And certainly subscribe to this channel if you are interested in this topic. That is all for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.